Okay, so moving on. Let me start with who am I. I'm a blogger, speaker, and a developer. I have been developing apps since 2011, and uh, uh, and this presentation gonna be, or this talk gonna be very contextual and very biased, and for some people it's gonna be very religious. And so let's have a discussion if going so. I'm going to start the context of this talk. Mobile apps are not dumb or thin client anymore. Because when you think about a web server, decade back, you can see the performance on your phone right now. It overgoes that web server performance. You have quad core processors and so on. So why we are thinking mobile apps has to be thin client anymore? So thin client anymore. And when you think about that traditional decade by 3-tier architecture and the mobile, how mobile is working is very different. As users, you need your connectivity on your phone all the time. And that connectivity leads to data syncing always. And that data syncing as a user or a mobile app user, you want that data to be shared among all your mobile devices. It could be a wearable, it could be iPhone, Apple iWatch, or Android Wear. And that capabilities, you can build it upon diverse set of tools. It can be native, or it can be phone gap, cross-platform, or simply writing your application in C# and compiling it to native code. And I'm sorry, I can see I have to do this way. So how mobile app works. So let me tell you, mobile developer, who are still working on this 3-tier architecture. You have a web server, you have a app service, and you have REST API. That's the traditional way we have been working for the last decade. So this has to be changed because we don't have to rely on that power anymore. Mobile devices are pretty much powerful right now. We can bring that computational power and that algorithm or whatever machine to mobile device or your mobile application. And if I ask why, this is very subjective because we have been working on the same design pattern or this legacy 3-tier architecture for a long time, and as human beings, we are resistant to change. So we are still there. And right now, whatever we are working on, or our system or our product, those are still based on this 3-tier architecture. So we don't want to change anymore. And moreover than that, if you are backend developer or a mobile developer, you know what you do is you expose a mobile API or a web API, and you use that on both web and the mobile because it's easy, it's reusable. So moving on that, you feel so much of issues. User experience, connectivity tolerance, server cost, and mobile developers are lazy because as mobile developer, what you do is when there's a requirement, what you do, you just ask the backend developer to expose a service. That's the easiest thing to do because you have your third-party APIs to do the JSON serialization. You have your model generators. You just do the thing as you say, but you don't take that computational power back to your powerful mobile devices. If I go through one by one, when you think about this 3-tier user experience, client, they expect magic from you. I know how it feels when the client asks something that you can't even think of doing with a normal development cycle. And every minute, these development features or the SDKs are getting advanced with different features, and you have to make sure your applications are up to date, or your the mobile app features are mimicking or catering the same thing which is served on the back-end side. And more than that, I have seen we don't want to have a loading screen on our mobile apps anymore. That's so old school. So how can we do that? And connectivity. Tell me who is not connected to Wi-Fi anymore? Is there anyone who is not connected to Wi-Fi anymore? I'm sure, most of the people are connected because you need that connectivity all the time. And with that connectivity, issues come with what kind of infrastructure you're in. You won't get that 3G or 4G connection all the time. And even in Colombo, different places, that connection is so bad. I'm sure you guys have experienced that all over the world. And in developing countries, the what you call the next big thing or the next big market, the high data prices and the low coverage brings that low user experience and connectivity issues to this three-tier architecture or the legacy model of how mobile apps are working. And moving around, this is going to be very religious. So server cost. Yes, this is going to be a huge killer for handling big user groups because even in Azure or AWS, you have a free tier for around 1 million push notifications. But then again, if you want to actually monetize the application, or if you want to revenue money out of the application, you might need 1 billion users. And when you reach that cap, you have to start paying huge amount of money back to the server cost or Azure and so on. And this server cost and also reflects with the number of users you have. Even WhatsApp started to monetize very recently. They started using WhatsApp for business and so on because they have reached their goal or the cap of users they wanted to achieve it. So what can we do then? What I'm going to do is, what I want to tell you is, you can bring that computational power where you have cost benefit on the server side to the mobile phone is the endpoint processing. But there's a workaround for that. You can actually cache your data on the mobile phone. But then again, cache is not so, let's say, healthy. Because it has to go through too many tiers, because caching is not directly done through. You might use a third-party framework or already cache on back on Azure. And if the server or the connectivity issues comes back, that data is going to be very slow. And more than that, if you have the caching on your mobile phone, if the uncached data is there, you won't be able to access that. Same as if you go as queries, again it will be slow because you are going through different layers of information or SDKs or a platform. And it will not work offline because you are actually asking for the data inside your application. And mobile developers, you are so dependent on the backend team. You have to wait till your backend guy expose a server or backend guy create a new feature and make that mobile friendly. There are a couple of workarounds for that because most of the cases you create a service for a web and you create another backend for front end, have a mobile friendly API. Still you are dependent. You don't have that monopoly to go faster than your backend team. So what is the solution? Same as, and you can have your endpoint processing. You can bring that computation power to your mobile device, as I said previously. So how can we do that? The modern hardware, right now I am using an iPhone 7 and it has a quad-core 2.3 gigahertz, 32 GB memory and 2 GB RAM. That is so much faster than a web server that was decade back. So let's bring that up to the mobile. Have the simple 3 steps, the steps you have your primary store on your mobile phone. And you can use, and users will be always available for data. It will be always instant, always available. And for backup is only for sync and statistics. Because you won't be having any n number of service calls back to your server. So this is the usual service first architecture where we are still working on. But if you bring that smartness and that data back to the mobile side, you can do much better. You can give you much better user experience. So how does it work? So I have seen there are 3 perspectives on this endpoint processing. So one is single use applications, collaborative and browser application. Let me go through. This browser application is much more different what we think. It's not a web view application whatsoever. So single use application is where it's more user centric. User creates his own data and he browses through. It's more like a Gmail application where you own your own data. It's very user centric. But when it comes to collaborative, you are a subset of that data set. You are browsing your data and also data that is created by other users or other members of that application. But this is a bit tricky when it comes to endpoint processing because there can be conflicts between data synchronization. I'll be talking that on the latter part. On the browser application, what happens is you're actually looking at content that was created by other users. If I say if you take yourself out from Facebook or selfie out from Twitter, that is a browser application because you're going through the content that was created by other users. So let's see how this mobile-driven design can come for our development phase. First of all, this is a discipline or a change of mindset. Because I started my talk saying mobile developers are lazy. Because you always intend to get something very easily done, and you need, if you're going for a mobile-driven device, you have to bring that computational power or that business logic into your application. And you build your experience from the device-centric way. And you let the back-end shape around it. So right now, you have your data store, you know your model how you want it, you start developing. So according to your models around the models on the mobile application itself, you can have a back-end service to that needs. It's not a API-driven development. It's more of synchronization-driven development. So how does that affects on your backend? So we don't have any of these API calls now. So we have a single data synchronization method. So most one-way synchronization. That is, if you don't have any many changes. Let's say a Gmail application. So you have your Gmail. Most of the time, when you open the Gmail application, you have your cache or local storage emails in your application. But when it gets connected to the application, it just do a small synchronization and gets the latest update one. It doesn't pulls back all the data set. But with a two-way implementation, when there's a collaborative application, it's a bit hard to do because you have mergers to do, and you have to handle different logic to do that mergers, and you have to make the data clean. Because end of the day, you don't want to end up in your application with worse, dirty data and make your users suffer. So if you may ask, is this approach can be used for every application? The simple answer is actually no. You can't use this application for every business model you have. This mobile-driven approach is driven by the business need and the user need and how often user need to access that information. So primarily, this approach is good for user-centric applications. So if you have applications such as governed by your own user data, this is much more better because you don't have to be connected always to browse through data, such as, let's say, simple to-do list. It's your own data. And it's sync up with the data in the cloud, and you need to have that information shared among many devices that you own. So that is a good example if you need to have a user-centric application. And not for just browse other people's data, because you don't need to browse other people's data when you're offline. You need to be updated with the latest information which is created by the other party. But why is it hard to do collaborative applications? Have anyone done mobile-first approach on a mobile application? Maybe with a third part, like Rome or IBM mobile-first approach? Anyone? So you are guys still working on the traditional 3-tier architecture. So and you still end up with loading screens till you get the consume the data calls. So how does it solve it? One way is you can actually have powerful offline first features. So that can be done by powerful third-party frameworks such as Rome. Have anyone used Rome for your mobile database connections? That is one rich offline tool, database tool for mobile-first approach that you can use. Another one is you can have a framework, or you can have powerful edge computing on your mobile app where you have a system have a least distance for your endpoint and for data processing. And for the famous solution for that would be, there's a new framework called IBM Mobile First, So it brings out that collaborative and merging tools to a one single page where you can simply integrate that SDK and have the mobile first approach without any issues on data merging. And you have to go through a Chrome database solution. I recommend that if you are working on a user-centric and also maybe a somewhat collaborative application, go for this. And what are the benefits with endpoint processing? You will get much more responsive application because you have your data on your mobile phone. You don't have to wait for information. As soon as you open your application, you can pull out data from your local data store and populate the list. This is a good example where applications such as Facebook done that. Facebook has a local storage inside the application where it shows offline data till it goes online. And also you can post your updates even if you're offline. When you go online, it goes back to the server. So you can have more responsive application. You can work when the connectivity is low. You can update the application and so on. And the huge reduction from server requests. This is something actually I have even faced, that when you have applications such as running on collaborative application, you need to be updated with where the user gets server pushes information to the mobile application. So you have to keep sending on pull to refresh calls back to the server. That is a huge number of calls when you look at the number of users exponential to the number of requests. So you can reduce that because you have the data again on the mobile server. And the mobile team can iterate faster. Because right now you have your data store, you know how your database schema is. You can create your models inside the mobile application. So on the mobile side, what happens is just a simple data synchronization call back to the server. Once it gets back, you can have your own service layer tier type data access, let's say DAO, data access managers, and get that information out. You don't have to wait till the backend team creates something and gives back to you. You can iterate faster. Because I have seen in my experience that the mobile team is a separate entity and where the backend team is a separate entity. When the feature comes into your backlog or your story, what happens is mobile team is building fast and we are waiting for the backend team to iterate. But with this approach, you don't have that issue. It's just again a data synchronization call. So that's since this is a lightning talk, I'm not going to take much more time. So that concludes why we need to do endpoint processing in your future application. It's something with the lower data cost and lower high data speed. You can and higher mobile device capabilities. You can have your endpoint processing and the computational power inside your mobile application. And also, I have been working on some of the AR application. What I'm seeing when you have in iOS, there's a framework called CoML, where core machine learning is done. But what happens is it sends back that information back to the server, do the computational part, and brings back the data. And that has a huge lag on the huge hit or latency on the mobile application. But if you do that on another framework where that computation power is done by the application itself, you can have a much more responsive VR application or AR application. So that concludes my talk. Do you have any questions on that? Thank you for coping up with me with this technical difficulty. Thank you, guys.